The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 118, recorded on Sunday, March 24th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we'll discuss the recent Elon Musk interview and how terribly his brain has become broken. But first, the headlines.
I got along with him well, although he did announce the other day that he'd much rather see Biden as president. And I agree with him. I agree.
First up in headlines.
Speaking of broken brains.
Mine. Tomorrow is the deadline for Donald Trump to put up a bond for his appeal of his $454 million judgment in the Arthur Engeron New York real estate fraud case. Trump is attempting to appeal the decision made by Judge Engeron last month, but as we said, he would have to provide the court with a bond for the full judgment amount first. That 30-day grace period expires on Monday, and Trump has said that he cannot find any bond company that will put up the amount needed because he does not have the cash on hand to back those bonds.
I mean, duh.
And the bond companies / insurance companies won't give him a bond based on real estate, which, especially when you owe that much money because you lied about the value of your real estate, right. I can imagine they might be, a little suspicious.
But you know who does care about real estate, though? New York Attorney General Letitia James, because she has now started the process of seizing all those real estate assets, which makes me very happy.
Yep, the two that everyone thinks, because of the filings that they've done in Manhattan, that might be targeted are the Trump National Golf Course in Briarcliff Manor and Seven Springs, a private estate in Bedford.
Take them. Go get them.
So what are Trump's options here? First, he can try to find another company willing to issue a bond.
Which doesn't seem likely.
Right. I believe the judge has told him to try to get multiple smaller bonds, but it doesn't seem like he wants to do that or can't do that either. Again, for the same reasons. He can also get a third party who's willing to put up collateral for a bond. Maybe the subject of our main topic, Elon Musk. I know they did have a meeting about 3 weeks ago.
They did. But according to Elon, though, he was just having breakfast with another friend and Trump just happened to be there.
Yeah, I'm sure it just happens all the time.
Yeah,
He can also have a judge issue a stay or change the bond amount. I would say personally that's probably the most likely scenario. He can also file for personal bankruptcy, which for obvious reasons he's not going to want to do.
Yeah, that would
during a presidential election.
That would be literally political suicide.
He can also attempt to negotiate with Letitia James to accept a lower amount. Probably not likely, seeing as how he has insulted and attacked her throughout this entire process.
Go get him, Letitia.
Next up, we've got a local story as a jury finds former Milwaukee election official guilty of election fraud.
Yeah, this story is about Kimberly Zapata, the former deputy director of the Milwaukee Election Commission. We actually talked about this story, I don't know, was it months ago? A couple months ago, I believe.
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
For those of you who don't remember, Zapata was found guilty of election fraud and misconduct in a public office. And basically what she did is that she used her work laptop, rookie mistake, bad time, you shouldn't do that. That should be number one rule when you're trying to commit fraud. Anyway, don't take legal advice from this podcast. To request 3 military absentee ballots to be mailed to the home of Republican State Rep. Janelle Brandtjen of Menominee Falls, who also, by the way, is under investigation and indictment of other fraud
for a
cases.
separate issue.
Right.
She is a huge Trump supporter and supporter of the election was rigged lie.
Right. Well, she was a part of the scheme where she was trying to swindle money through local county parties. That was another story we covered in a previous episode as well. So, really good source of integrity there.
Right. And Zapata claims she was just trying to expose the flaws in the system and trusted Brandtjen not to mail in the ballots.
Well...
It's like I robbed that bank just to show that the bank was easily robbed.
I was just saying, she thinks like she's like that one. Do you remember like in was it? I think it wasn't Breaking Bad. It was the Better Call Saul, where Mike goes through like that tech company and just like breaks in, pretends he's a security guard, gets all this stuff, and then just like, hey, by the way, here's why you should pay me all this money because here's all your bad security holes or something like that. I think Zapata either is totally lying, which I think is probably the case, or she legitimately thinks that she's Mike from Better Call Saul, where she's like, I'm going to sneak in here and I'm going to show everyone the flaws of our system. That's why we're all going to figure it out in the end anyway.
So I think this was just a political stunt to try to show that this system can be gamed. So I don't think she's wrong in that, but one, that's still illegal. And two, you got caught showing that it's not so easy.
Right.
And the other thing is, like, those ballots would have had to have been filled out and signed, which would have been another case of federal election fraud and felonies to whoever filled them out, and would have been caught because the signatures wouldn't have matched what's on file.
Right.
Which is the whole point of our system. We do have safeguards in place. You will get caught. So just saying that, well, I was just doing this to expose the flaws, you were doing it as a political stunt to try to show that the election could have been rigged, and instead fell on your face. And now her sentencing will be held on May 2nd, and she faces up to 3.5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine for the misconduct charge, and another 6 months in prison and $1,000 fine for each of the election fraud charges.
You know, Kimberly, you are going to go down a true hero by showing that our election system is actually not broken at all. Thank you so much for your service to your state and your country. We appreciate it. Now go to jail.
And a couple quick stories. The Department of Justice has filed an antitrust lawsuit against Apple. We're not like a tech news podcast. We're not going to have a ton of details, but...
Well, in hell, man, you're more the tech guy than I am.
But the allegations include anti-competitive practices, such as blocking apps that may compete with Apple's own software on their storefront, and making cross-platform messaging unappealing to shame owners of other phone brands. Like, I don't have an Apple phone. I don't really care, but I guess my texts come up as a different color from an Android phone. I don't care.
Okay. Oh yeah, now I know what they're talking about. Yeah, it's because you're lesser of a human being than I am. I understand that now.
So this is and I like there's some differences in if I try to share video with you, what it looks like. If you try to share video with me,
it doesn't work well.
The video's degraded.
Yeah.
And so are photos. I have had that issue. My wife has an Apple phone. Whenever she sends me photos directly through messaging, they look terrible. So those types of things are what is being alleged as anti-competitive practices. Critics of this, and I've even seen from some, pretty much leftist sources that don't think that this is a good lawsuit, claim that Apple made a lot of these choices for security and aesthetic purposes, and the government may be stifling innovation and security by going after them in this way.
Well, and maybe they're just a bunch of, I don't know, Android shills in the DOJ who are just jealous of all the Apple users. Maybe that's why.
Could be. But I would like to see this as just the start of a wide-reaching antitrust attack on tech companies who definitely, for years and years and years, have been just using anti-competitive practices.
I'll say let loose to do whatever the hell they wanted. And I do agree with you, by the way. I mean, all jokes aside, go for it. When we hear from like Ben Shapiro and Fox News that the DOJ is being weaponized against big companies who are trying to like take advantage of us, and that's a bad thing, then we know we're doing the right thing, right? I want to hear the backlash and the outrage about how our DOJ is just attacking these innocent multi-billion-dollar corporations. Right. That's what I want.
And also, Candace Owens on Friday has departed from the Daily Wire. Unclear whose decision this was, but the announcement came as a tweet from Jeremy Boring, the co-founder of the Daily Wire, who said, "Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship," followed quickly by a response from Owens, who said, "The rumors are true. I am finally free." And then said that there's more to come, and you can go to her page to give her money, of course. Owens has been with the Daily Wire since 2021, but has been in conflict with co-founder Ben Shapiro over her criticism of Israel during the Gaza conflict.
Well, let's be real here. Miss Conspiracy Theorist is not a woke radical.
Right. Some of what she says, especially when it comes to this being a genocide, I can't really argue with. But she also says a lot of crazy Israel runs Hollywood and it's a cabal cabal, that's where I draw the line. Like, okay, now you're veering into the anti-Semitism territory.
So I actually listened to a recent discussion with Candace Owens and I think it's Destiny, the left-wing streamer on YouTube.
Sort of, yeah.
Right. And moderate left. And I was just curious about how Candace will be in an actual one-on-one interaction with stuff like this. And the entire conversation, like you can go watch it yourself. I recommend it. She is like hyper conspiratorial about everything. But once it gets to like things that she cares about, conspiracies just disappear. The idea of the conspiratorial mindset just disappears. But for every single other thing in her life, everything is a conspiracy. It's insane how we have propped this person up who literally cannot walk a single day without thinking that there's a giant cabal after her for all this crap. It's insane.
There's a lot of defense of Kanye West, even after he went on the InfoWars praising Hitler.
Right. Because she's a conspiracy theorist. She doesn't know anything.
And a lot of when she talks, she definitely reminds me of Nick Fuentes and some of the stuff we played from him.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I hate the Jews because I'm so Christian.
Right.
And, you know, I certainly don't agree with that. And this is a situation where I'm sure we'll start to see some more shots being lobbed between both sides here. And in this situation, both sides are both wrong and terrible.
Yeah, I hate both of them.
So I just want to give you a quick little clip here from the great Ken Watanabe on what you should do in this situation. I think you should just sit back, watch what's going on, and
let them fight.
I'm not going to lie, when I saw the word immortal, I immediately jumped to Mortal Kombat. And I didn't know why.
Well, that would have worked too.
I didn't know why.
Mortal Kombat.
Right. I didn't know why Ken Watanabe was in Mortal Kombat for some reason. And I went on a roller coaster of a
He would have
thought.
made a really good Raiden.
Right. So just saying, you just set me on this weird ride in the like last 5 seconds.
That's from one of the bad American Godzilla movies. But
anyway, go get them, Candace and Ben and Jeremy. And we're rooting for all of you to tear each other apart.
Yep. And finally, in headlines for this week, Marjorie Taylor Greene has filed a motion to vacate the House Speaker position.
That didn't take long.
The intellectually challenged Republican representative from Georgia filed for a surprise motion to vacate today after the House passed a $1.2 billion spending bill, which once again avoids a government shutdown, this time until September 30th, and passed with more Democrat support than Republican.
Man, I love the fact that we are literally just basically living check by check as a government, as a
Right.
world power. You know, that makes me really happy and like secure that we're doing this month by month.
The motion was not privileged, which means it is
Wasn't white, so
it means it's unclear if or when a vote would take place. If it was a privileged motion, that would mean that they could not do anything else until a vote on the motion had taken place. But now it'll actually take Marjorie Taylor Greene to call for a vote. So it's not clear if she's going to do that or when she's going to do it. But the House now begins, of course, a 2-week recess because they really have serious jobs and $200,000 to constantly be off. You're the one that's mooching off the government, not them.
Well, and what's even more interesting about this, which is what we don't have listed here, is that the author of the TikTok bill, Mike Gallagher, Wisconsin home native.
I was going to bring that up.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to bring it up then because you didn't have it written down. Who initially said that he was not going to seek re-election, now officially said he's going to resign in April.
Right, 3 weeks from now. So only a week after they come back from recess.
Yeah.
That leaves the House Republicans with only a one vote margin.
And I'm pretty sure Marjorie can find one crazy friend in the Republican caucus.
The reason why supposedly everybody, the Freedom Caucus, is upset with this bill being passed is because they said that they lost all of their leverage. They gave up all of their power to the Democrats by passing this bill with Democrat support. And instead, they should have used all of their leverage to basically just have a border bill and no funding for anything else because they don't want to fund anything else. If it's not killing brown people at the southern border, they don't want to fund it.
Which is crazy. They don't want to fund wars anymore. They just want to kill brown people.
Right. Well, that's the problem. The other war that we're funding in Ukraine is against Russia.
Yeah, not brown people.
They're all white people involved. They're okay with funding Israel.
Because that also concludes with brown.
Right.
It's like the main clause of their platform, you know?
So do they really, do they truly have leverage? Did they give it up? So what would happen if they would have passed the bill that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and all the other lunatics wanted? If they would have passed a spending bill that was just giving money to Israel, closing down the southern border, building a wall, all that they want to do there, and nothing else.
What would happen?
Right. Could they have used their power to get that bill in the House?
No.
And why is that?
Because the government wouldn't work.
Well, because the Senate would never pass it.
Well, that too. But I'm saying, like, even if the Senate did, it would just lead to more government, like, literal collapse if that's all we didn't fund.
But they wouldn't have got. That's my point. Is
Sure.
They have no leverage because it's not going to get past the Senate. It's not going to get signed by the president. So they want to use the government shutdown as a way to leverage this, but then it's not going to happen. And it would still be the Republicans can't pass a reasonable bill. They're the reason the government shut down.
Right.
So they don't have the leverage that Marge and like I said, all the other lunatics think they do. They just don't have it.
Oh, so you're saying Marjorie Taylor Greene, intellectual giant, has been mistaken about how the government works?
P90X legend. Yeah, they just think that they're going to magically get this bill through and get what they want instead of the responsible bill that went through, which I don't 100% agree with. Like, it's funny because they're calling it like, oh, this is a win for the Democrats and the progressives. You know who voted against this bill alongside Marjorie Taylor Greene? The progressives.
Yep.
So it's not exactly a win for the extremes on either side. This is very much a moderate, keep things where they are bill. And it's going to potentially cost Mike Johnson his position. Now, there are some Democrats that have indicated that they may go along to help Mike Johnson.
And they should shut the fuck up right now.
Right.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay, let's talk about that then. Because number one, we saw how stupid they look when they were trying to elect Mike Johnson in the first place. We saw that happen. Same thing with when they were trying to elect Kevin McCarthy. Why would you not want to show the entire country again during a presidential election year how worthless and irresponsible they are?
Yeah, their inability to govern.
Yes.
I agree. They should 100%. Again, I've said it over and over and over again. The Democrats need to just support Hakeem Jeffries. Not my favorite representative by a long shot, but they need to just 100% back him and say that's who we want as the speaker. We don't want any Republican as the speaker. Our speaker is Hakeem Jeffries. That is the only person we will vote for. And if we have the ability to remove a Republican as speaker, we will do it. And it's not, they don't have the majority. Republicans have the majority. If they cannot get behind anyone to support as their speaker, that is entirely their fault.
Yeah. It's not our fault that Kevin McCarthy and Mike Gallagher and George Santos are just gone. It's not our fault that the crazies in the Republican caucus constantly try to rescind the speakership every single time something doesn't go their way. Sucks to be them. Republicans are in disarray, and it's not our fault. And we should not take responsibility when they are constantly trying to destroy the country.
And should not help them avoid
the
chaos that they themselves cause.
Here's a really easy question that'll help a lot of those Democrats figure it out. Would Republicans do it for Democrats?
Yeah, definitely not.
Then there you go. Then don't do it for them.
And I once again say...
I was just going to do that. Dang it.
Let them fight.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy, ain't right.
For Fox in the Head this week, we have brand new data we have to present to you that's being suppressed by the mainstream media. According to a new study, woke people are more likely to be unhappy, anxious, and depressed. It has made Fox News and all the YouTubers and conservative commentators have been losing their minds about how hilarious it is that woke people are more anxious and depressed. Let's hear from Fox News.
Welcome back. Time for the Morning Buzz. Waking up to wokeness. A new study from psychological researchers in Finland suggests being woke could lead to unhappiness, anxiety, and depression. The researchers developed a critical social justice attitude scale. That scale reveals 7 truisms that woke people are likely to believe. One example includes university reading lists should include fewer white people and European authors. Your reaction, Joe?
You know, Maria, here in New York, I observe the woke in their natural habitat. And I really have to say, like this is an observable phenomenon. I mean, think about the people. These are people who predominantly moved away from their nuclear families, their extended families in Ohio or wherever. They've come here to New York or urban centers. They've supplanted it with, their book club or political activism, and they're never truly happy. I mean, this should not be surprising to anyone that understands how important family and children and really, placing an emphasis on the things that we all should place an emphasis on.
No.
When you eliminate that, it shouldn't be a shocker. It's shocker. The Pope's Catholic. Woke people are unhappy. Yeah.
Exactly. Cheryl.
You know what? Well, I mean, I think about what's happening at college campuses across this country, and this study is a good example of our youth and the way that they are thinking and believing these progressive ideas that have permeated, and they're being taught this by professors, and now they're coming out into the real world and realizing, oh, well, my woke progressive ideas, pick one, doesn't actually translate to reality. No wonder they're unhappy. Can't blame them. Can't find a job.
Again, as they said, but then quickly forgot, this is a study out of Finland.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, of course, look at the universities across this country. Look at New York. Not in Finland, the last time I checked.
Well, and man, okay, I'm trying to save, like, oh, what does the article actually say? Or what does the study actually say? But it's so hard to not immediately dive into that because of how stupid the commentary is. Because we'll get to it. They don't even talk about the study. That's as far as they go. They just say this study exists. They saw the headline.
Yeah, they looked at the headline.
And they go, well, I mean, duh. Do you see how stupid their beliefs are? No wonder they can't find a job. That's why they're depressed. Oh. And literally, this is a audio medium. I totally get it. But that woman who was talking at the end, you won't be able to see it, but her head the entire time is like a bobblehead. She's like, I just can't understand why woke people are just, trying to continue with their ideas when they know that it just makes them sad. Ooh, Jesus Christ.
And also, I mean, again, we're talking about Finland. Finland is much more of a progressive country than the U.S. is overall, by far. So in order to be considered progressive in Finland, you're basically Greta Thunberg at that point. So I think they're missing a lot of that context, and they're just immediately trying to throw it in the United States and be like, well, this was clearly a study on everyone in the world. And so we can correlate what this study found in Finland to the U.S. immediately without even thinking about it.
I also just love I see the woke in their natural habitat here in New York. These people are just leaving their nuclear families from the Midwest and coming to New York. I'm sorry. Weren't you the same exact people who are complaining that people aren't moving enough to get jobs? Aren't you the same people who are saying that people need to work harder to get what they want?
And where is Fox located again? I forgot.
Oh, it's clearly, a super
Cleveland,
red,
Ohio.
Yeah, super red city, right?
Right. Not New York City.
Right. I also love the fact that he's trying to bash people who are living in New York. Dude, you are also in New York. What are you talking about?
All of you are in New York.
So stupid. And if you thought that was crazy, wait until you hear from conservative commentator Benny Johnson about this new study.
If you've ever thought that wokeness is the affliction of somebody's self-loathing, particularly white leftists, particularly women on the white unhappy women, man, damn it, you were right, and science proves it. The gender divide was probably the most striking to me, said the researchers. 3 out of 5 women view woke ideas positively, but only 1 out of 7 men. Isn't that amazing? You see why the over-feminization of society is happening. You see why they're going after women in this stuff. It looks like your grandparents were right. And what do I mean by that? It looks like a society that is founded upon belief in God, belief in a higher power, the nuclear family, loving somebody till the day you die, being in love, and then starting a family, and then having grandkids, and having a purpose in life. It seems like those things, having a stable economy, police that actually do police work, a government that actually protects our currency and protects our borders, and that looks out for its citizens. It turns out that those things, structuring a society in that manner, is actually the best way to live and leads to the best results.
Once again, this is a study from Finland.
If we believe in God and have babies,
the predominantly atheist country of Finland is see, this proves that my God is right.
No, okay. For listeners at home, I got to watch Jason react to that in real time. I could just see him just like constantly going, what the
Yes, the socialist, atheist country of Finland, which always ranks near the top of the happiness indexes around the world.
Right behind the United States.
Yeah.
With our guns.
Right, like 90 spots ahead of the United States. And it's like, oh yes, this proves that American conservatism, God, guns, and Jesus is correct.
Well, and can we just talk about, number one, his, like, how visceral he said women?
Right, yeah.
Angry
also,
white women? I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude.
Misogynist.
And then talks about,
women.
like, how, and this is actually, like, the only accurate thing he says in the study is that men were far more likely to reject woke ideas than women were. Again, we'll get to that in a second. But then he goes off on a tangent about, like, this is why we have the over-feminization of the society and our country. I'm like, okay, here's the deal, you guys. There is an emerging gender gap when it comes to politics and issues in our country right now. Why is that? And again, this is my field of expertise right now. It's political psychology. That's where actually this article comes from, which makes it even angrier. The reason why there's such a gender gap right now is because of the identity-based issues that Republicans are literally trying to attack women on. Abortion, equal pay. Literally, think of any women's issue you can imagine right now and how conservatives are responding to it. No wonder women are flocking the Republican Party in droves. That's why they're more interested in these ideas. It's because they're not being attacked by these ideas. That's it. And these idiots like Benny and Fox News commentators can't get it through their thick freaking skulls to understand that. So what does the study actually say? Now that I'm angry. Like Jason said, this is from Finland, and Lahtinen, the author of the study, set out to create a scale to measure critical social attitudes among people. And this is just a general psychology way or a psychological measure of trying to understand how people think the way they do. That's all it is. Using that scale, what he did was surveyed about 5,000 people to see if these correlated with different mental health outcomes. And what did he find? He found that acceptance of these specific woke beliefs are not popular at all, actually, even in the woke country of Finland. Most participants rejected the proposed woke beliefs outright. And like Benny said, men rejected all but one, while women were a little bit more accepting of these things, but not overwhelmingly. And to make matters worse, a large chunk of people didn't even understand what woke or wokeness was when they were being surveyed, so all their answers had to be tossed out. However, just again, trying to be fair, people who self-reported as woke agreed with almost all of the beliefs. So there is some academic rigor to this thing and some accuracy to what the scale is. And basically what these beliefs are just things like, if things happen to people of color, it's probably because of racism. We should be teaching less white and European authors in universities and more people of color, things like that. And they're just agree or disagree metrics. That's all. The study also found that high social justice scores were actually not associated with higher levels of depression or anxiety. And while the data shows positive correlations between acceptance of these attitudes with anxiety and depression, they're admittedly by the author not predictive. So this whole headline and like
right, so that means
news like fiasco is
right
bunk.
So that means if you find someone who does subscribe to woke ideology, whatever that means to you, that does not mean that they're like more likely to be depressed or have anxiety,
basically. And okay, it's a little more complicated than that, but it's more of people not understanding how a study works than actually being like the hypothesis being wrong, because obviously the hypothesis is much more narrow than what Fox News is trying to make it out. But of course, that's media and scientific literature. What actually correlated with anxiety and depression was people who identified with being on the political left. Oh no. And it goes on to talk about how other studies show correlations between people on the political left and depression. And it basically becomes more about a chicken or the egg thing, where it's like, are people who are more depressed tend to be more liberal, or are people who are liberal tend to be more depressed because of how they think about things? It's not like my ideology automatically leads me to depression and anxiety. Again, complete misunderstanding of how the literature works. Mm-hmm. And to show how much they misunderstand this, in a video by The Quartering, which we won't play, but you can go look it up on your own, he literally goes over the answer while trying to make fun of people who are supposedly liberal and depressed. And the answer that he finds out from Columbia University literally says that people who are liberal tend to be more depressed and anxious because they care way more about the issues that they are trying to solve than conservatives. They are more focused on them, and they're more worried about these issues not being resolved. And they tend to have more empathy for other people. That's it. That's literally it. It's that liberals, and I guess woke people tend to care more than conservatives. Groundbreaking.
And that is also, as you mentioned, a different study, not the one that brought all of this from Finland, which, again, being on the left in Finland is a completely different animal than what we're talking about in the United States of people being on the left versus the right anyway. And there's that whole problem or issue that is never addressed.
And thank you for actually reminding me about that, because I was going to bring that up earlier. The author also goes into the fact that this is mostly college students and a smaller sample, although representative, of Finland. He goes into detail saying that we should not espouse and generalize it to any other society outside of the specific demographic in Finland.
And honestly, if you want to talk about who seems happier, at least from what I see, how many times do we go over, oh, there's a new video game released and it's got a black person in it, or you can make your character trans.
Right.
And all the right-wingers freak out and like scream and cry about it and how it's ruining their enjoyment of that genre.
Well, and let's also bring up the fact that, and this study didn't cover it, but liberals also tend to be more willing and accepting of saying that they are anxious or depressed.
Right. I think conservatives generally don't believe that those things exist.
No.
But yet they're constantly crying about immigrants coming to the southern border and taking over our country. But yet you're going to tell me that they're less anxious and they're happier.
They're so stupid. They are just so dumb. It makes me so angry. And it makes me angrier that they found an article from my damn field to try to laugh at people. Hate them.
You sound very happy.
Shut up.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
For our main topic today, we're going to talk about Elon Musk and some of the recent headlines that he's been involved in. And we're going to start off with the kind of now infamous Don Lemon interview.
Yeah, it took off more than I actually expected it to be. And I don't know about you, Jason, but I watched the whole thing, and man, I don't know. I'm not a big Don Lemon fan either.
Mm-hmm.
But the overall theme of this interview was how easily someone like Elon, who has no clue what he actually is talking about and just has his ass kissed all day long by people, especially on Twitter, crumble right before a couple of questions.
Right. So if anyone's not familiar, some of the background, Don Lemon was a CNN anchor who was recently fired. The reasoning behind that is disputed, but he was recently picked up by Twitter, by Elon Musk, who was going to give him a show to show that, it's not all Tucker Carlson and extreme right-wingers. We're going to give moderate, centrist Don Lemon a show as well. And the first episode was going to be the interview with Elon Musk.
Right.
And it went so poorly that it caused Elon Musk to cancel his agreement with Don Lemon.
Right. And just for clarification, and Don says it in his show as well, the show isn't canceled. The show's going to keep going on, but
it's not going to be hosted on Twitter. Right.
Or it's not going to be an exclusive Twitter show that was going to give him like special rights and some other BS. I don't even know. So just for reference, before we get, I don't know, fact checked, or was it community reported on Twitter or something like that? The show wasn't canceled, but the partnership was.
Elon Musk tweeted that the contract was canceled, and then later tried to say that they never had a contract when some talk of some legal repercussions came out. But that was his initial reaction.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to go over a couple of clips from this interview and just kind of show you how broken Elon's brain is because of the rabbit hole he fell down into. So we're going to start off with Don and Elon talking about the Great Replacement Theory, and Don basically questioning his responsibility for pushing conspiracy theories like this.
The Great Replacement Theory is a neo-Nazi trope. It's in the Neo-Nazi Manifesto. It's in the Turner Diaries. It's referenced by the Buffalo mass shooter in his manifesto, where 10 people, black people, were murdered in Buffalo. There's the actual title of the Christchurch Shooters Manifesto. 51 people in the Muslim mosque were murdered. 23 people murdered in El Paso by a shooter who used the same language that you use in that manifesto when you say Hispanic invasion. Is that not?
I didn't say an Hispanic invasion.
And you quoted a tweet that called it a Hispanic invasion.
If I quote something, it doesn't mean I agree with everything in it. It's just something that I think this is something worth people should consider.
Why would you quote something that you didn't believe?
Because anything I quote is going to have a whole range of statements. Doesn't mean I agree with everything in it.
Do you think if you moderated yourself more, if there was better content moderation on the platform, that you wouldn't have to answer these questions from reporters about the great replacement theory as it relates to
don't have to answer these questions.
The great replacement theory as it relates to Jewish people? Do you think that?
I don't have to answer questions from reporters. Don, the only reason I'm doing this interview is because you're on the X platform and you asked for it. Otherwise, I would not do this interview.
So you don't think? Do you think that you wouldn't get in trouble or you wouldn't be criticized for these things?
I'm criticized constantly. I could care less.
You don't care?
No, I don't.
Why
care.
not?
I don't think people should care what the media thinks about them. They're terrible judges of character.
Even someone who has one of the biggest social media and biggest information platforms in the world, you don't care? You don't think that you have any X.com or you have any responsibility to the truth or moderating the platform?
You're conflating the truth with the media, and I think the media is not truthful.
Just because I retweeted someone saying that there's a Hispanic invasion, and that's all they were saying, it doesn't mean I necessarily agree with it. I just think it's important for people to see it.
What a slimy little bullshit. It makes me so angry because this is exactly the answer that someone who is just trying to get away with doing whatever they want give. That's all this is. And for the record, this is also him being able to justify, and we'll talk about this later on the episode, but the vast majority of all the Elon Musk controversy is him reposting, retweeting, or whatever it's called nowadays, and quote tweeting other things. And he'll just say, so for example, like the whole, was it the pro-Holocaust thing, or was it the Jewish conspiracy thing? I can't remember what it was. That whole scandal is from like months ago. Do you remember that, Jason?
We did cover it.
Right. That was a quote tweet where he said that this is the actual truth to this other thing. This is so he can get away with crap like that.
Yeah, it's very dishonest. It is, as you said, very slimy. It's a way to avoid any kind of repercussion for repeating these just disgusting, bigoted views.
And for reference, they're talking about a video Elon pinned to his profile with the caption, "This is actually happening."
Well, just because I put that there, that doesn't mean that I agree with everything that was said. Maybe it was just the word "the." Are you trying to tell me that you don't agree with the word "the"? I find that very, very misleading by the media, that you would try to say these things about me.
Well, and also keep in mind that this, damn it. And also keep in mind that this isn't just like a random post. Like you have to intentionally pin something to your profile so that everyone sees it. That's the idea of a pinned tweet or a pinned post. And we're not going to show the whole thing, but I have to show you a couple clips from this incredibly crazy racist conspiracy theory video that Elon pinned to his Twitter profile.
The Democrat open borders plan to entrench single-party rule, explained in under 2 minutes. 1. Flood the country with untold millions of illegals by land, sea, and air from all over the world, enough to eclipse the populations of 36 individual U.S. states so far. 2. Prioritize the needs of these millions of non-citizens over the needs of the American citizen, with free flights, buses, hotels, meals, and phones, ensuring their loyalty to the political party that imported them. 3. Keep them in the country at all costs, even when they commit violent crime like murder and rape. Attack the language used to describe the criminals, as opposed to the criminals themselves. Slander critics as racist. 6. Wage a massive, heavily funded lawfare campaign to change state voting laws that legalize mass mail-in ballots, no signature verification, and no proof of citizenship requirements, making it nearly impossible to prove voter fraud.
Get that drum and bass. Oh, they're gonna come take our jobs. They're gonna come replace us.
They're gonna let them vote. But only if they vote Democrat.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, this could have been made by the Daily Stormer.
Yes. And again, not only is it insane that we are trying to do this like for like some weird entrenched one party control of the that's Alex Jones level shit, man.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
Turning the frogs gay.
I will, and I just had to also include that little last point. It goes on about how like they're going to talk about how we're going to entrench them even more by giving them more benefits and welfare and crap like that. But it's just so stupid. So we'll include an article that actually has the link to the whole video if you want to watch more craziness. But what makes me really concerned is that Elon was parroting this like verbatim in the interview where he gave the whole like, well, yeah, don't you know that like we're bringing illegal illegal immigrants to the country to give blue states a higher delegation count in their House of Representatives because of the U.S. Census doesn't count citizens, it counts residents.
Aren't they coming in from the South? It's the Southern governors that are shipping immigrants to northern and blue states, right? Like Texas is saying that it's a state of emergency with the number of illegal immigrants coming into Texas.
And I'm sorry, if it's such a freaking gold mine, why wouldn't the South be doing this?
Well, and also, like, yes, you want to actually count the number of people that are in your state.
Yes, because that's how, like, actual funding works.
Right, because you need infrastructure and resources to handle the number of people that are there, because they're still people. I mean, I know Republicans and conservatives don't like to think of them as people, but they are still people. So you would still want to count them regardless.
And even then, our Electoral College and our Senate still give heavy favor to less populous areas and Republican counties anyway. So what are we even talking about?
Yeah, what is a vote worth in Wyoming compared to a vote in New York or California? It's like a ridiculous amount.
And it's
just fear mongering. Again, we just talked about how the left are more anxious. Like, if you honestly believe the stuff that was in like that that video and like the music and everything, talk about anxious.
It's ridiculous. And he tries to get away with saying, like, I can post this stuff even though I just don't agree with all of it. Shut up. Like, he's so full of it.
Yeah, what part do you disagree with? And I like how it's just too, like, the end of it was just like, and number 6, they're going to change all the voting laws.
Oh yeah, I had to include it because
where is that?
Right. The video also goes like, oh, and the best part, your tax dollars are paying for it. It's so stupid, man. It's so dumb. Let's keep on with the dumb. We're going to talk about DEI now, of course. So let's hear from Elon Musk. What he thinks about DEI.
So listen, let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right. That's been a target of yours lately on X. There was a repost of Ben Shapiro that you claim that DEI is killing people. Specifically, you point to medicine. You claim that DEI programs are putting people at risk. Do you really believe this to be true? And what evidence do you have to support it?
What I was referring to there was that if we lower the standards for doctors, such so that they, if the test for a doctor is lowered, then the probability of them making a mistake and killing someone is obviously going to be higher.
What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
There's no evidence of that, Elon. What is the evidence?
I believe they have literally lowered the standards at Duke University, and that is what the article was referring to.
There's no evidence.
Saying they have not lowered the standards?
There's no evidence about lowering standards, and I think that there is.
I believe that is a false statement you're making.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out. Do you believe that people are dying because medical standards, DEI is causing medical standards to be lowered? Do you actually believe people are dying because of that?
I believe that if we lower the standards for what it takes to become a doctor.
You're saying if we lower the standards,
yes.
But do you believe people are dying because the standards are being lowered?
I don't
or have
think
been
that
lowered.
is yet an issue, but it could become an issue.
Okay.
He's all over the place, man.
But is it true? I believe that they lowered the standards. Did they lower the standards?
No, they didn't lower the standards. And again, makes me so stupid. It's making me dumber. I'm not gonna lie. It makes me so angry. The article that Elon is referring to is a tweet thread by Ben Shapiro,
another intellectual heavyweight.
And I'll include an article that shows how Duke has to basically fact check Ben Shapiro's stuff, because all it is just a nonsense thread where he takes a bunch of like little anecdotes that don't actually support his claims at all and just try to say that, well, because people want to include more diversity in patient outcomes, and that this other doctor said that patients who have doctors who look like them tend to receive better care, is going to lower the standards and kill patients. I'm not kidding.
Bottom line, they're not lowering their admission standards.
Nor are they hurting anybody. It's the same nonsense we heard from like the Charlie Kirk show, where it's like Boeing's going to try to secretly crash planes because black people are going to become more pilots. Like, Jesus Christ, man. And I already cut out like all the other crazy nonsense where he's trying to tell Don Lemon, a black man, that actually he's fine in society as a black guy. It's totally fine. Like, we don't need to worry about any of this other stuff because it's so ridiculous that people aren't based on merit. So I excluded all the other racist stuff, but I have way more because Elon then starts talking about the woke mind virus.
Let's talk about trans rights and the woke woke mind virus because you talk about that a lot. You write about that a lot on the thing. You have been deeply outspoken about the issue of trans rights. You posted trans rights. You posted that pronouns in bio mean the woke mind virus ate your brain. Do you know what the term woke actually means?
It's come to mean a lot of things.
But what originally it was meant to mean. It's just being aware of inequities in society and being aware of facts and history.
Yeah, I think it's come to be. I think being aware of inequities in society is fine, of course, but trying to blame everything on trying to make everything a race issue is, I think, divisive and corrosive to society. I think we should not make this a constant subject. I think we need to move on. I think we just treat people like people. I think we want to look to the future rather than the past, and instead of engaging in constant rehashing of the past, because in fact, if you look at history, if you study history broadly, everyone was a slave. Everyone.
Yes. Well, not everyone was a slave.
No, everyone was a slave.
Okay, but
we are all descended from slaves.
Yeah.
Well, all of us.
Yeah.
It's just a question of when. Was it more recent or less recent? That's it.
When you talk about, let's talk about trans rights. When you decided to talk about the trans rights movement, you said that it was a woke mind virus. Why do you believe the trans rights movement is a woke mind virus? What do you mean by woke mind virus?
Woke mind virus is when you stop caring about people's skills and their integrity, and you start focusing instead on gender and race and other things that are different from that. I think the woke mind virus is fundamentally racist, fundamentally sexist, and fundamentally evil.
Okay, there's a lot to talk about here. First, what does that have to do with trans rights?
Man, that was I had to include that one at the end because that was the closest he got to a definition.
If you say so. But also, how did Don Lemon not backhand him when he said, we're all slaves, really? Man, we're all I don't know how that doesn't...
Like I said, I took out so much where Don Lemon's like, it feels really insulting that I'm trying to tell somebody I've been discriminated against as a black man, and he's saying I'm not. I just want to let you know that. And Elon's like, yeah, but you're fine. I took out like 5 to 10 minutes of that, Jason.
And I wonder why...
We're all slaves, though, man. We were all slaves.
African immigrant Elon Musk is like, let's not talk about the past, and let's stop focusing on who apartheided who, and whose dad owns an emerald mine, and let's look to the future. And yet, once again, I feel like because he's just pushing the most racist, white supremacist talking points, everyone was a slave. The type of slavery you talk about when you go back to like medieval times in Europe, of like you get conquered and the people that lose are turned into slaves, and like indentured servitude and everything that happened previously is not fundamentally the same thing as chattel slavery in the United States for over 200 years. Yep. Where merely because of the color of your skin made you property and not a human being, and any children you had were immediately also property, with no way of getting out of that situation at all. That is not the same thing. So we were not all indeed descendants of slaves.
Well, and again, when he's complaining about wokeness, he doesn't have an actual definition of it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Like anybody else who rants about wokeness, he'll call, I guess, what do you say Don Lemon was? It was like pronouns in the bio means that the woke mind virus broke your brain or something like that, or infected your brain. We never even said how. Like it's just, hey, I don't like these things and these are just different to me. Therefore, it's evil and sexist. And even with his definition, thing that he gave us is when you stop caring about skills and merit and only care about race and gender, that's when it's bad.
And that's trans
evil.
rights, apparently.
Well, but that's the thing, though, is that what does having pronouns in your Twitter bio have to do with skills and merit, man? What does having skills and merit have to do with trans rights willing to exist? It's the same thing over and over again. It's just nonsense.
Right. It's the pseudo-intellectual just repeating of talking points that you hear from other people really reminds me of somebody else that we both know.
Right. And that's why I really just want to hit this point home. Elon's brain is broken, man. Like, Twitter literally broke his brain. He fell down a rabbit hole so freaking hard that he cannot get out of it. And I feel bad. Like, I mean, like, I feel bad for anyone, like even our friend who would do that as well. Like, I don't want people to think that way. I don't want people to fall down to cult-like rabbit holes of conspiracies. I went down that path. It's bad, you guys. And to think that he's some kind of crazy intellectual genius is just anything but the truth. And then to end the interview, Don Lemon asks him about why advertisers are leaving the platform, and he gets real tantrumy about it. Let's listen.
Let's talk more about free speech and for advertisers, right? Because all this controversy, I believe, as you know, has made X less appealing to advertisers. About half of them have left the platform. You call advertisers that left X.com. You said they were oppressors. You've even gone as far as saying it publicly that they can go F themselves or go F themselves.
If they're going to force censorship on the company before advertising, then obviously I find that unacceptable.
You find it unacceptable. Why is that not a form of free speech? They are free to advertise where they want. They're not beholden to, they're not obligated to advertise on X.com.
Right.
So how is that not free speech?
That's, whereas the other platforms will censor on behalf of advertisers, the X platform will not.
So you said if they kill the company, it's them. But doesn't the buck stop with you? I mean,
John, I have to say, choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
Okay, but so
is this the question you want to ask?
The same question is you said that they are killing the company, but you're the head of the company. The buck doesn't stop with you?
I acquired X in order to preserve freedom of speech in America, the First Amendment. And I'm going to stick to that. And if that means making less money, so be it.
So I have to be, listen, I'm just being honest, right? I'm not trying to, get you or anything. I was just surprised that you would blame other people for killing the company. I mean, when you say the buck stops with the President of the United States, regardless of what happens, right? So why would that question upset you? You seem upset by it, are you?
I think
and I'm not trying to upset you.
Well, you are upsetting me because the way you're phrasing the questions, I think, is not cogent.
It's not what?
Not cogent.
It's not Kojak. Yeah, just simply saying your stance that you don't care if advertisers advertise on your platform or not. They don't, because they don't want to have their ad show up in a thread about how Jews are going to replace us.
Yep.
And immigrants are going to be given hotel rooms and cell phones and voting rights by the Democrats, because advertisers don't want to be associated with those kinds of racist, hateful messages.
That's censorship.
Right. That Twitter is going to go out of business and it's going to be the company's faults that don't want to advertise with you. How is that their fault and not your fault for the type of platform that you're creating?
And it's like you didn't understand it.
Right. Well, your question's not cogent. That's such a, I want to appear intelligent, but I just don't have an answer for your question.
Well, I'm sure his shareholders are really bricks right now too when they say stuff like that. I'll be willing to make less money if that's the case. And you'll throw away your entire multi-billion-dollar company out because of this, right? And again, if Twitter goes down, hell, okay, sounds great to me. But as a primary owner of this company, I feel like you should care about the company.
Well, and the question was not, should you run your business this way? It's, why would you then blame someone else
for
the failure of the company when it's because of your decision?
Right. And you won't take any responsibility responsibility.
Right.
He can't take responsibility because he's a petulant child.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And
but free speech.
Yeah, his dedication to free speech in America, the First Amendment, which has nothing to do with Twitter because Twitter is not the government. But again, he's an immigrant. Maybe he didn't really pass that citizenship test, so he might not know that much about the First Amendment. But let's see if he's telling the truth about his commitment to free speech as we talk about an incident that occurred last week that was making a lot of news after multiple journalists and researchers had their Twitter accounts suspended after discussing the recent discovery of the identity of racist right-wing cartoonist Stone Toss, aka Red Panels. This is from a Wired article. The incident highlights once again how Musk has not only welcomed extremists onto his platform, but has repeatedly boosted their conspiracies, engaged with their accounts, and seems to have protected them from scrutiny. And this originally started with the Anonymous Comrades Collective, who posted a lengthy thread where they went over multiple lines of evidence to determine that the anti-Semitic, anti-trans, neo-Nazi bigot cartoonist behind the Red Panels comic is indeed the same person as the anti-Semitic, anti-trans, neo-Nazi bigot cartoonist behind the Stone Toss comic, and also revealed his identity, supposedly, as 34-year-old Texan Hans Christian Graebner, who obviously we are not a visual podcast, but if you look up the pictures of Herr Graebner, it's pretty much
real
exactly what you'd expect. The dumpy white guy who thinks that he is part of the master race. And I believe also his mother is Puerto Rican, which...
Cool.
The thread received over 13 million views, and Graebner, under his Stone Toss Twitter account, appealed for anyone with a direct line to Elon Musk to ask him to get it shut down. In the past, Musk has shared an altered version of a Stone Toss comic, not surprisingly. Hours later, the Anonymous Comrades Collective account that posted the thread was deleted, and the account was suspended. The next day, dozens of users, including a number of researchers and journalists, began discussing the incident and posting some of the details of the research, including Graebner's name. Twitter began locking those accounts and demanding that the tweets be deleted before access would be returned, including the accounts of Jared Holt, a senior research analyst at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, who covers right-wing extremism, Hannah Gase, a senior research analyst at the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Stephen Monticelli, an investigative journalist for the Texas Observer. There is also a Twitter ban on posting the link to the Anonymous Comrades Collective's blog, though you can find it in our show notes, where they detail the research that went into their findings. They were also removing accounts of people that typed out his name, like their account name would be Stone Toss is Hans Christian Graebner.
Okay.
Those accounts were being banned. You literally could not type Hans Christian Graebner
without
it was
ban.
Well, it would just not let you.
Oh.
So they went a long way into trying to protect this bigot's identity.
Even though they won't do that for trans people who are being doxxed constantly.
Correct.
Cool.
And according to Wired, who wrote to Twitter asking for clarification on this, the posts that were removed were all actioned correctly, said Joe Benarock, head of business operations at Twitter, adding that the posts violated the company's posting private information policy for outing the identity of an anonymous user. While Twitter does have a policy around sharing private information, the company's terms of service on March 20th did not mention a policy related to outing the identity of an anonymous user, and Benarock did not respond to a request for clarification. On March 21st, after Wired published their story, Twitter updated its privacy policy to specifically prohibit posting the identity of an anonymous user, such as their name or media depicting them.
This is insane.
And many have pointed to accounts like Libs of TikTok and far-right troll Andy No, both of which have shared private information about trans people, but have not had their accounts suspended. Musk has also engaged with posts that doxed individuals on X, and he even follows Andy No, with seemingly seemingly no recourse for those accounts.
Cool. So free speech for me, but not for thee.
It always ends the same way. Free speech means speech they agree with.
Right. And this is, I don't know, man. I'm baffled by Elon Musk, and I'm baffled that he has so much power when this is what's happening to him and this is what he's doing. Granted, I know we also live in a country that's about to potentially have Donald Trump be the president again. Like, I don't know what to do about this. When you have a person who has fallen so far down the rabbit hole with so much power, what do you even do, man? He doesn't care. He's being questioned. He just gets angry about it.
Right. He has enough money and influence where he doesn't have to engage. It's not going to hurt him at all.
And you also hinted, and I forgot to add this earlier, but like when he does this, he does real damage as well, where he's boosting all this crazy nonsense. That one thread that you said, it had about 13 million views on it because of him. Even with Ben Shapiro's stuff, his average tweets get around a couple 100,000 views maybe on Twitter. The thread that Elon Musk pushed and boosted, 33 million.
Yeah, it's like people like Joe Rogan.
Right.
Who bring kind of a different... So Joe Rogan was all like the comedian, UFC bro stuff for the longest time.
Yep.
And since he's moved way more to the right and embraced conservative ideology, he's brought that group. And you see with Elon Musk, it's like the tech Bitcoin bros. And now that segment is, moving with Elon Musk because they ride his jock very, very hard. Because a lot of people in the U.S. equate wealth with intelligence and success being the only goal in life. And they see Elon Musk as this, one of the two richest people in the world. And they equate his wealth and his success with intelligence and being correct.
Correct. I completely agree with all of that. And just as a last thing to show you how bad of a problem Elon has. So I went onto his profile and I grabbed now this was granted on Thursday when I was prepping for this episode, and I grabbed the last 10 or so tweets from his profile. The dude tweets a lot, by the way. He is
constant.
Again, high off your own supply is like a perfect example of what happened to Elon Musk. Dude's addicted to this platform. But let's go through it just really quick what some of these tweets are. Quote tweeting Benny Johnson, that same crazy guy we talked about before, with the caption, "Wow," where Benny Johnson's talking to literal white nationalist Stephen Miller on the Democratic scheme, quote unquote, to allow illegal aliens into the country so they can continue to be counted in the U.S. Census. Quoting another random person saying the Washington state government signed a bill mandating LGBTQ history be taught in schools. Wake up, America. They are coming for your children. And Elon quote tweeting it saying they are.
And they're just not a random person, Joe. They paid for a gold check mark. It's like the corporate check. Those are very expensive.
Sounds good, man.
You get a personal line to Elon Musk if you give him a lot of money.
Apparently, but look at this. This is some random tweet, and it got 10 million views because of Elon.
Right.
Reposting Matt Walsh saying squatters can now come in and steal your home with no consequences. Elon Musk tweeting, when sending medical advice, ask your doctor, but also ask an experienced nurse. Nurses are underrated. The least crazy thing he has tweeted in my list here.
Also, not the best advice.
No, it's still not the greatest because it's hey, by the way, don't trust your doctors, by the way.
Right.
But still,
try to find someone who follows your beliefs. Just keep asking until somebody tells you to, try Reiki or something.
Right, exactly.
Don't do that.
And for the record, nurses are awesome. Another one where he reposted libs of TikTok saying that the Mayo Clinic is discriminating against straight white people in their inclusive hiring practices. And Elon saying reality has become more bizarre than parody. Also, employment discrimination is illegal, so they're breaking the law.
So again, an account that has been known repeatedly to release private information of private individuals, not even someone who's a public figure posting all of these racist comics, but private people who are just trying to live their life, but they're trans. So this account, Libs of TikTok, will post pictures of them and give their names and the schools that they are at or whatever the information that they have.
Hundreds and thousands of bomb threats on these schools that will completely disrupt and endanger all of the students involved.
And not only does that account not get suspended or the same treatment that people got for reporting on the identity of a racist, bigoted cartoonist,
it gets boosted.
Right. Elon Musk follows them, retweets them, gets them more views.
2 more for you. Elon quote, again, can you just see how these are all quote tweets? Because he's doing this on purpose so he can get away with this crap. Elon's quote tweeting "end wokeness," because of course, saying, "Holy shit, Google just quietly changed its search results for bloodbath definition." And Elon saying, "Google is deeply infected with the woke mind virus."
Well, and also, it's not Google's definition. They have 2 different searches.
Man. I know.
And the first one returned the result from dictionary.com.
Yep.
The second one returned the result from Oxford something. I can't read. It's too small. But a different dictionary. They're like, Google just changed its results for bloodbath. No, it didn't.
Yep. And again, these people are just so damn stupid, but so confident. And finally, quote tweeting some other random person with, I don't know, it's just like a picture of 2 New York Times tweets, I guess you can say. One from like 2020 saying that Trump's allies had promoted unsubstantiated claims of corruption about Hunter Biden. And then another one from 2023 saying a federal grand jury has charged Hunter Biden with a scheme to evade taxes. And Elon saying the New York Times is pure propaganda. And we already talked about this in an earlier episode about what's been going on with Hunter Biden. And just because what's going on with Hunter Biden.
But I thought, going after people for not paying their taxes was like a leftist plot. And that's why we needed to get rid of all of those IRS agents.
Oh, and actually, you can see it right below that as well. He reposted Ben Shapiro. How committed is the Biden administration to an open border? It took the Supreme Court overruling the White House objections to allow Texas to enforce immigration law. Again, literally harming brown people.
Just because I retweeted it doesn't mean I agree with it. I just agreed with the question mark that Ben Shapiro had in his sentence.
Like, what else can you make of this pattern? What else can you do? The guy is off his rocker. He's just posting conspiracy theories all day long because he loves this stuff and people love him for boosting their stuff. So he's just in his little echo chamber all day long trying to do this.
He has become a huge source of and supporter of right-wing propaganda.
That's all it is.
And his buying Twitter is one of the worst things that could have happened to the country.
And it concerns me, man, because we are in a presidential election and he's going to keep pushing this stuff. Now, granted, I would also like to think that the vast, vast majority of the electorate is not on Twitter. And almost all the studies show that Twitter is not real life, so we shouldn't pretend it is. But when this guy is constantly making headlines because of saying things like this, I think it could potentially influence people because they also don't know what the hell they're talking about. And because Elon says it with such authority, like he's some intellectual genius and people will crowd around him like a freaking cult, they're just going to keep boosting it over and over and over again until it just takes over all discourse. I mean, there's a reason why we're talking about it right now. That's the point. And we wouldn't be talking about this if this is just some random schmuck. But the fact that this is a multi-billionaire who has one of the largest social media platforms in the country just posting random right-wing conspiracy nonsense all day long.
Well, and who admits that he bought the platform, even though we all know he didn't want to, but he bought it so that he could control what the discourse was.
Right.
And he'll claim that it was for freedom of speech, but as we've shown, that's not true. That he's just lying or a giant hypocrite when he says that. He is using it to boost and to profit conservative, far right-wing hate speech. And that is a bad thing. It's a bad thing for our country. It's a bad thing for the population. It's a bad thing for immigrants. It's a bad thing for everyone. And I hope it goes out of business quickly. And I hope more advertisers leave.
And if you have friends who keep trying to say how Elon Musk is misunderstood or is actually a really smart guy, but the media narrative is just off of him, just send him this episode. Show him.
Just bring up his Twitter feed.
Yeah.
It's all right-wing conspiracy reposting.
Right. That's all it is. Friends don't let friends like Elon Musk. That's the theme of the episode. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.